Hello, good morning. For those of you who are getting my show in the morning and afternoon and evening for the rest. Today Ben's Kuah Show is occurring the day after a very sad event took place in Charlottesville in North Carolina, in Virginia, in the United States of America. Why is that relevant? Some might ask. You know, in the United States of America, they believe in the fundamental rights of everybody to have their say, what they call free speech. In the Ben Kuah Show, in the last Ben Kuah Show, there was this argument on set, if I'm not mistaken, about, and I know the argument has been raging, about the fact that is it free speech? Is it the right of the Federalists or the one Cameroonians to have the same billing, the same public space as the Ambazonians arguing for their rights to determine their sovereignty or their destiny by themselves? I did not feel that I did service to Ambazonians in that argument, because I really did not make mention of the fact that free speech is a fundamental right. But free speech as a fundamental right should not infringe on the right of anybody to life, liberty, justice. My boat cannot be going down in the middle of the ocean with nobody there having a swimsuit. And I am there encouraging people to move to one side where it can tilt the boat so that the hole on the other side is above water and the boat doesn't sink. And you think that another person in that boat has equal right to convince those people that no, don't stand on that side that will tilt the boat so that the hole is not, water doesn't come in, but to instead go on the other side that will push the boat down and water to come in and all of us sink down. No, sir. No, ma'am. That person does not have the same right to free speech. My land cannot be burning. Ambazonians raped and killed in the streets, and you tell me that a federalist has the same right on the Ambazonian public space as an Ambazonian fighting to give a piece of life, liberty, and justice to the Ambazonian people? They don't. They do not. Not now. Let me tell you something. In the land of free speech, in that land, they do have something that is called the state of emergency. What is the state of emergency? The state of emergency is a situation imposed when the life, the livelihood, the security of a community, of a state is threatened. During that period, the authorities have certain rights not granted to them when there is no state of emergency. There is a state of emergency in the southern Cameroon, in Ambazonia right now. A state of emergency. The federalists and the one Cameroonians who are telling the people that the building is not burning, they should remain there. For it to burn and crumble on their heads, do not have the same right to the free space as the Ambazonians fighting to get people out of the burning building. If you are inside a nightclub with people full, with that nightclub full, and you shout fire, fire, when there is no fire, and people rush to get out and are crushed and killed, you are caught and prosecuted. Free speech be damned. So yes, I did not do justice to that last week. But that is what I am doing today. Because in Charlottesville, let me come back to that. In Charlottesville, Virginia, when the neo-Nazis, the alt-right, the white supremacists, who believe that the white race is supreme above all other races, who like to see the blacks dead and buried, who cheer on Hitler and his final solution for the Jews and all other people. Those people decided that they have their right to free speech. Are they any different from the federalists who come into southern Cameroonian communities and territory and in the both in the diaspora and at home, and preach their rights for La République to continue the rape and the murder and the arrest and the exploitation of our people? Do you think that those Nazis and racists and white supremacists in Virginia are any different from this, what these people are preaching? Don't forget. Don't forget. Ambazonians did not choose independence or joining with Nigerians. Ambazonian chose a federation. A federation. Quote unquote. The only choice given to them. So what other federation are they talking about? Isn't this the federation we are living? Of lack of economic opportunity, shut out of the political atmosphere, cultural genocide, and human genocide. Isn't this what we are living? So what other federation are they preaching? They are preaching nothing less than our extinction at the hands of La République du Cameroun. And call me any name you want to call me, they are not different from the white supremacists who preaches extinction of the Jews and the blacks at the hands of the Nazis. They are not different. So here we are, folks, in Charlottesville, Virginia, Saturday, August 12. One person was killed and 19 were hurt when a speeding car slammed into a throng of counter-protesters in Charlottesville, where a Unite the Right rally of white nationalists and other right-wing groups had been scheduled to take place. The city tweeted on its verified account. A 32-year-old woman was killed while walking across the street. Charlottesville Police Chief Al Thomas said police were in the process of notifying her family. This is an article on CNN. 2 Virginia State Patrol troopers were killed in a helicopter crash while assisting public safety resources with the ongoing situation in Charlottesville, the agency said in a news release. So there you have it. More than 20 people were victimized in that situation, and the mother of the victim, here is the statement of the mother of the victim. The mother of the victim said that she is really proud. I quote, "I am proud of what she did." A woman that was mowed down by the car from the white nationalist terrorist. "I want her death to be a rallying cry for justice," Susan Bro told Huffington Post. "I want her death to be a rallying cry for justice." A lot of us, Ambazonians, have been forced by the genocidal and thuggish regime of both Mr. Paul Biya and Amadou Ahidjo and their French overlord to seek refuge in a lot of foreign lands. We are in South Africa. We are in Nigeria. We are scattered all over the earth like the Jews were scattered after the death of Christ. In Charlottesville, in Virginia, we have a sizable populations of Ambazonian. People who grew up without an Anglo-Saxon university and had to seek higher education outside of the land. People who grew up without economic opportunity and had to seek livelihood outside of the land. People who have suffered genocide, cultural genocide, and had to look for different opportunities outside of the land of Ambazonia. If there is one thing that all of us have observed, we have always observed the totem pole, where we are on the totem pole as members of the black race. In every society, from east to west, we are at the bottom. We have a home. We have a home. Ambazonia, land of my birth, where my forefathers once walked, free and proud. We have a home. I should not die in a foreign land. I should not die in a foreign land. I should not walk down the street and somebody look at me and somebody feel that I do not have the same right as a child of God to walk down that street. What happened in Charlottesville is a disgrace. That people with such vile thoughts, with such vile ideology, are allowed to parade the public space is a disgrace. Yeah, it is free speech, but it is a disgrace. The burden of the black man. The burden of the black man. And so when would it end? When is all of this going to end? During the Second World War, Japanese Americans, those living in America, were rounded up and put in concentration camp because the country was afraid that their first loyalty does not lie with the country that they identify with, but they lie with their motherland in Japan. We all know since the 15th century, when the first Africans, captives, landed in Jamesville, we all know the burden of the black man in the Americas. Slavery. The power, the blood, and the suffering that made a colony to become the greatest power the world had ever seen. And today, the black man is still carrying the burden of the hatred and the bigotry in this world. I told my producer today that I am pulled in so many directions because the show that I had prepared to present today got diverted. Because as I was coming here, Jamesville, where the first Africans captives landed in America, and Charlottesville yesterday, where the white supremacists clashed and murdered and preached hatred, kept rattling in my mind. The Chinese, the Japanese, I just mentioned them and how they were treated. Nobody right now would attempt to treat them that way again. Why? Why do I make that statement? That this day and age, America will not treat the Japanese or the Chinese with such contempt, arrogance, and absolute disregard of their humanity. Do you know why? The Chinese have suddenly become a world power, economically, militarily. Same with the Japanese. They showed the Europeans and the Americans that after the First World War, when we were your allies and we are going to sit on the hall, you put a high table where the first race, the whites, will sit there, and those your allies, they sit on the second table because they were not as human as you. They went back, they built their ships, they built their aircrafts, they built their economy, and they challenged that white supreme race, and they gain respect. They gain respect. Will a black man anywhere in the world ever gain the same respect if Africa remains in this state of childish and childhood? Will the white supremacists, the Nazis in Charlottesville, turn around and look at an African walking on the street and have respect for him or her, so long as the Africans back home, they still look at it and feel that these are monkeys running around in the street, on the trees, running naked on the street, people who have absolutely nothing to contribute to the world. Will somebody from East, the Far East in Russia, to Hawaii, have any respect for the black man if Africa continues in the trajectory that it is? Tell me, why should an African on the streets in Paris, in Bonn, Norway, in Berlin, in St. Petersburg, Siberia, Alaska, why will an Africa in Buenos Aires, in Sydney, why would anyone look at a black man or a black woman walking down that street and feel any respect for him or her when the French have a colonial empire today in Africa? Why should they feel any respect for any black man anywhere in the world? Tell me. You know, just tell me. Sometimes you sit and the weight of the calamity of the black man falls on your shoulders, and you have teary eyes and shaky voice emotionally, because you see a people with everything that God had given to them feel that they do not deserve everything that God has given to them. An American in a fledgling nation, cannot compete. Yeah, they won their independence. They had gotten independence from Great Britain, but what the heck? It was a Lilliputian. I mean, a Lilliputian compared to the powers in the world then. This American sitting in a White House, that's a pale shadow, and a country that's a pale shadow of what it is today. This American sat in the White House and knocked his deck and said, the buck ends here. That nobody, no European or any foreign power will have domination over any part of the continent of the Americas. That the buck stops at the White House. Not British Empire with the navies, and not the French, not the Spanish Armagada. The buck stops at the White House. And when are they being a nation? What we did? Nothing. Nothing. But to them, it was a blow to their pride. It was a blow that they live in this continent for a foreign power to come and have domination over them. Over any part, not even over them, any part of that continent. Did he have the right that an African, that a Nigerian president, a South African president, or any other president in the continent of Africa has to make such a statement? What had the Americas suffered in the hands of these European powers that would compel an American to put his nation on the line to say that no people on his continent would be subject to European domination? Let me give you just a little part of what has happened to the black man in Africa. Slavery in America began when the first African slaves were brought to the North American colony of Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 in the production of such lucrative crops, as tobacco. I call it Jamestown. I am sorry, I think in the beginning of the show I would call it Jamesville. Jamestown, but it's the same Virginia that yesterday the white supremacists were in Charlottesville. That's where the first Africans landed. The Atlantic slave trade developed after Europeans began exploring and establishing trading posts on the Atlantic coast of Africa in the mid-15th century. The first major group of European traders in West Africa was the Portuguese, followed by the British and the French. The Portuguese, followed by the British and the French. Mid-15th century. Around 1650. Let us get some of these gruesome facts. You say the slave trade had profound consequences for Europe. Between the early 1500s and the early 1800s, the slave trade became one of Europe's largest and most profitable industries. Profits from the slave trade were said to run as high as 300%. In the mid-18th century, a third of the British merchant fleet was engaged in transporting 50,000 Africans a year to the New World. Oh my God. Slavery played a crucial role in the development of the modern world economy. Slaves provided the labor power necessary to settle and develop the New World. Slaves also produced the products for the first mass consumer market: sugar, tobacco, coffee, cocoa, and later cotton. Slavery was an integral part of the earliest multinational system of credit and trade that arose in the 15th and 16th century. The African slave trade also stimulated European shipping, manufacturing, and gun making. The transatlantic slave trade was the largest movement of people in history. Between 10 and 15 million Africans were forcibly transported across the Atlantic between 1500 and 1900. But this figure grossly understates the actual number of Africans enslaved, killed, or displaced as a result of the slave trade. At least 2 million Africans, 10 to 15%, died during the infamous Middle Passage across the Atlantic. Another 15 to 30% died during the March to or confinement along the coast. Altogether, for every 100 slaves who reached the New World, another 40 had died in Africa or during the Middle Passage. I can pull out these gruesome facts all day. For every 100 who reach the Americas, 40 had died on the road. One of the greatest genocide that mankind had ever known. One of the greatest genocide that mankind had ever known. So about 10 to 15 million people reached the New World. If 50% died during the Middle Passage, so that's basically how many? So you have about 7 to 8 million people who died during the Middle Passage. It is estimated that as many as 60 million Africans died or were enslaved as a result of the slave trade. About 60 million Africans, 60 million died or were enslaved during the slave trade. How is it possible? How is it humanly possible that after such a history of horror, the Africans, Africa would allow the existence of a colonial empire in the middle of Africa today? You tell me how possible will a South African president, a Nigerian president, a Ghanaian president or professor or student in the Jomo Kenyatta University, in the university in Ibadan, in any university across Africa, from Johannesburg, Soweto, to the Gambia, and can I say to Howard University, to all the universities that Africans hold positions in and study in. How is it possible that today millions of Africans are trapped in a colonial empire after this history of horror, of slavery and genocide that I just presented to you? How is it possible? What is in the bottom of our stomach that we can go about our business as normal when the French controlled the destiny of millions of Africa in a continent that they had participated in the genocide of millions of Africans? How is that possible? Do the white supremacists yesterday in Charlottesville, did they have a point? Did they have a point to look at the African on the street as not being a human being, as being something else? Do they have a point in matching that the earth will not lose anything if all the black men and women are wiped off the face of the earth? Do they have a point? How is it possible that the destiny of the cradle of mankind is held in the grasp of a colonialist, is held in the grasp of the French, and every day, morning, afternoon, evening, Africans get out of their bed in Johannesburg, in Soweto, in Ikom, Ibadan, in Accra, in the south side of Chicago, in DC. How is it possible that millions of people of this race get out of their bed day in and day out and go about their business as normal? And the French, as the grinding a machine of genocide and oppression in the continent of Africa. How is that possible? Does the people who were marching yesterday for the death of Africans, for the hailing Hitler, and those who have murdered racists, do they have a point? We cannot sit and say that it doesn't matter. We cannot sit in Nigeria and feel that, oh, nobody controls our destiny but us. When beside you, the destiny of people who look like you are held by the destiny of those who have visited horror on your own shores for centuries. You cannot sit in Ghana and say that, yeah, I go to my university, I came back home, I go to my job site, I am okay. When besides you, in Ivory Coast, the destiny of people who look like you are being held and crushed by a colonialist that has visited horror on people who look like you for centuries, and you feel that that is okay. They hold us in contempt. They look at the black man anywhere in the world with contempt and disgust. Because on a huge swath of Africa, we still have people going around using the CFA France, Colonie Française Africaine. Hundreds of years after friendship formed the armada of horror and genocide that carried millions of the most powerful, our brightest, our strongest, the warriors out of our land, with millions more dying on the road as they transported them to continent beyond to build the world of the human race. We stand on the cusp of a great event happening in Africa. The people of Ambazonia, the people of the southern Cameroons on Ambas, are deciding that no more. That can be the final battle for the liberation of the black man. Hundreds of years. The final liberation of the black man whose imprisonment started in the 15th century when the Portuguese, the British, and the French opened trading posts in Africa. We can open our eyes as Africans, as black men, to this final struggle. Or it can just be another passage of the horror that Europeans have visited on the continent of Africa. We might make it that. We might leave the Amazonians, the Southern Cameroonians, to their own device. We might just take it that it's one of those struggles of a people fighting for their destiny. We might take it as that. I have no worries. I have absolutely no worries about the fact that the Amazonians will gain their independence and pull themselves out of the French colonial empire in Africa. We can decide to leave it as that, as we did in Rwanda, when we left it as just a Rwandan issue, a people trying to determine their own destiny, and the French got away with the murder of 1 million Rwandans. What did that signify? We left it as that. And what happened? We also left it as that, as they went into Ivory Coast, actually shot people on the street, demonstrators, African, European troops in the middle of Africa, shooting Africans on the street, who came out in their first attempt to get Gbagbo and block them from getting into the embassy to get Laurent Gbagbo. And we left it as that, as just the Ivorian people searching for a way forward. And the French got away with getting Gbagbo and kidnapping him, and he is at a military tribunal in Europe. And they installed their stooge, Mr. Ouattara. We left it as that. Have our life changed in the University of Ibadan? Have we changed? Have they changed how they view the African man in the streets anywhere in the world? You think that when you leave Nigeria or you leave South Africa and you visit London or you visit anywhere, it's changed the way they look at you as a black man? Yeah. What's that? I mean, we left it as that. As they went in, the French, and they got Gaddafi. You know, oh, it's just the Libyans. Between Gaddafi loyalists and the others, we're trying to search for a way forward for the Libyan people. One of the best run economy and country in Africa. A country whose human development index was higher than most countries in the European Union. In a continent, if you say that, where the most pressing humanitarian intervention could be, would it have been Libya, or would it have been South Sudan, or would it have been the Congo, where more than 4 million people had died? Would one of the best run country in Africa and best developed country be the place to go to send in troops? Or would it have been where they were saying genocide were occurring in South Sudan and in the Congo? But we Africa, we left it as that, right? And Gaddafi, who had sat and said that, you know what, I am going to begin my work to undercut this colonial empire that was a disgust to his stomach by creating an African currency. We sat there as he was murdered. Did it change our lives? No. I mean, we got up in a day from Minnesota to Nashville, in Paris, Bonn, wherever we are scattered to. In Kampala. We got up and we went about a normal business, burying our head in the sand. And he was there. I mean, did we raise an eyebrow? When the French went into Central African Republic and another genocide started? Did we? I mean, did we even cough when they went into Mali to secure their nuclear production and their empire? Folks, do you know the countries that I just call on the intervention of the French? Can you just go in and look at the year? This is in how many years? In how many months? Have we already named an African policeman or an African army that nobody knows about? That just jumps from one African. Do we have an African? Have we appointed the French to be the African policeman? We bury our head in the sand. We cover it. And we feel that we live a normal life. While in our backyard, a terrorist goes to work day in and day out, diminishing our humanity, making us a laughable entity both on earth and in heaven. And we bury our head in the sand. We look and we don't see. We listen and we don't hear. And since the 15th century that the French landed in Africa and have never left. And we feel today that we should walk anywhere in the world and are not looked as a black man, as a laughing stock. They are not looked as a fool, a dumb ass by other people who see clearly what is happening in your own backyard. How would anybody have respect for any black man? How? Why? Tell me why the Nazis in Charlottesville should have respect for any black man in the world when the French, after what they have done in the slave trade, after Rwanda, are still the central governing authority in Africa. Tell me. We can make the fight for the liberation of Amazonia to become the fight of the final liberation of the black man. We can do that. Or we can leave the Amazonian to their own devices and keep our head under the sun. A terrible show. But I'll see you next week on the Ben Kuah Show. Thank you.